Jai Hind students, today we will discuss about the Cold War and the India's role during the Cold War. This is the first chapter of your political science book, Contemporary World Politics. Actually, this chapter has been deleted from your syllabus, but without understand it, you can't understand the chapter The End of Bipolarity. So, for understanding the chapter The End of Bipolarity, it is very necessary to understand the Cold War. What was it? You knew about the Second World War and First World War. During the First World War, in the US, Russia, there was the socialism came and it withdrew from the First World War in 1917. After that, Second World War was also started, and it was started in 1939 and it was continued up to the 1945. It was a long war. The world was very fed up because of these long wars. They wanted to end of it. You know how it ended. America dropped the nuclear bomb on Japan's two cities, Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The first bomb was dropped on Hiroshima on 6 August 1945 and on Nagasaki on 9 August 1945. In this way, Japan surrendered. This was the end of the Second World War. After that, the whole world, especially the Europe, was divided into two parts. Means to say, some were sided with the America and some countries were sided with the USSR. The whole Europe was divided in Eastern Alliance and Western Alliance. Eastern Alliances did the Warsaw Pact, USSR, and the Western Alliance with the side with America. They followed the capitalism and the USSR followed the socialism. Actually, Cold War, what was Cold War? First of all, you have to understand what was Cold War. Actually, Cold War was the situation when both the countries, America and USSR, they had the weapons, harmful weapons. They conduct the war, but none of them used these ammunitions against each other. But there was rivalry between both the countries, United States and the USSR. Without use of ammunitions, there was big rivalry between both the countries, and they made the alliances. Many countries, they followed the capitalism. They were sided with the United States, who were the follower of the socialism. They favoring of the USSR. They made the allies with the USSR. In this way, NATO and the Warsaw Pact, two allies were made. So this was the Cold War, without ammunitions war. That was called the Cold War, but there was big rivalry. Now, how it was origin? Already I told you about it. How the Hiroshima and Nagasaki affected because of the nuclear bombs. Both cities were destroyed badly. Actually, what happened when the alliances were made? Cuba. This is the island in the southeast of America. It was in the allies of USSR. At that time, the USSR president Nikita Khrushchev, he was the leader of the Soviet Union. He decided to convert the Cuba into a Russian base. So he started to place the nuclear missiles in Cuba. The installation of these weapons put the US for the first time under fire from the close range. Easily they could target the US from there because it was nearby it. Cuba was near. Easily it can destroy at any time the USSR. So at that time the president of United States was John F. Kennedy. He ordered his ships and his army, naval forces, to stop the USSR ships who are coming towards the Cuba. So this is the immediate crisis of Cuban Missile. It is famous by this name, the Cuban Missile Crisis. In this way, they started to make more and more ambitious. Arm race was started. Many countries were also in the threat. What will happen if the Third World War was started? Already now they were familiar about the nuclear bombs. Earlier they had no idea about it. But when United States dropped the bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the whole world knew about the dangerous effects of these nuclear bombs. So there was a great arm race was started, especially in the two superpowers, United States and USSR. Now, these are the countries who were in the allies with the United States. You can see Belgium, Canada, Denmark, France, Ireland, Italy, Netherlands, Norway, Portugal, the United Kingdom and the United States. Same. These are the countries who were inside of the USSR, who were following the socialism. Albania, Bulgaria, Czechoslovakia, East Germany, Hungary, Poland, Romania, Albania, etc. These are the countries. So in this way, the whole Europe was divided into two superpowers. Many other countries also, they were sided NATO or Warsaw Pact. They signed NATO of United States and Warsaw Pact of USSR. Some countries who don't want to become the part of these two pacts, NATO or Warsaw, they didn't want to join any alliances, Eastern or Western. They wanted to take the decision their own, especially the newly independent countries. They adopted the non-aligned movement that was called NAM. These countries who joined, first of all, who were the pioneer to adopt the non-aligned movement, that was the Yugoslavia, India, Egypt, Indonesia and Ghana. These were the pioneer countries. These are the sovereign countries. They were not sided with any alliance. They took their own decisions. They played their role independently. So this is called the non-aligned movement. India was the part of it. You can see this map. Non-aligned movement, how it was. These countries were encouraging the other newly independent countries also not to become the part of any alliances, two superpowers. They should remain independent and they become the part of non-alignment. At that time, India's foreign policies were different. During the Cold War, India adopted this non alignment. India was a sovereign country since its independence. Many ideologies of the Indias at that time matches with the Soviet Union. So because of this, India little bit titled towards the Soviet Union. Some critics often criticize the policy of the non-alignment. Ki they were not taking any interest in the world affair. They are totally assided. All these, they are not cooperating. But it was not correct. They were not isolate. They were not isolate. They many times interrupt in the world affair, especially to protect the human rights, to promote the scientific cultures, to preserve the cultures and traditions, to strengthen the world peace. Also, they did a lot of work. And NAM started pushing a new ideas, global cooperation instead of global competitions. They believed in the peace, maintain the peace in the world. And most of the conflicts could be solved by talking rather than of a war with each other. So in this way, critics were wrong that NAM was isolated. It was not taking any interest in the world affairs. It was wrong. You can see these pics of India's foreign policies at the different platforms. India played a very important role in the tamping down violent situations, especially bringing down the temperature in hot conflicts. But because of some similarities, some attached with each other, the public also attached with each other of USSR India, or it believe in little bit socialism also, so it titled towards the USSR. Many ideologies of India and Soviet Union matches with each other, especially the Indian culture is very much liked by the USSR people. Even the houses of the USSR, many houses of the USSR was named after the Indian actors, Raj Kapoor, Amitabh Bachchan, many more. At that time, India is also the second largest arms market for USSR at that time. India purchased a lot of arms and ammunition from the USSR. The end of the Cold War, how it was ended. After some time, the NATO countries who were in favor of the capitalism were following the policies and strategies of the NATO countries, Western alliances. They were progressing a lot because there was the competition. So they were developing. Rather than in USSR, most of the resources are under the control of government. Socialism was there. There was no independency. They were not independent to compete with each other. So there was no progress. These countries were not developing like the Western alliances. So They started to object. They wanted to take out their support towards from the USSR. Gorbachev at that time did a lot of efforts to solve the situation, to solve the critical condition. Kids should not be disintegrate. He provide them some freedom also, some his policies, his two policies, glasnost and perestroika, those became unsuccessful. After all, these efforts of the Gorbachev, because public was not believing on him, even the party members of his own government were not believing. They thought that he was impatient. He is going very fast. The results are very slow. They were not believing on his policies. This is the reason even his own people didn't support Gorbachev. In this way, in 1991, the USSR was started to, to disintegrate. After the disintegration of USSR, many countries stopped their support to the USSR. Fall of Berlin Wall, you have understood, in November 1991. Cold War was ended. In 1989 or 1990, the Germany was divided into two. The wall was there, that was broken in 1989. In this way, many other countries also took back their support to the USSR, and it was disintegrated in 1991. So in this way, there was the end of Cold War. So this is very necessary to know about the Cold War, what was the behind story of this end of the Cold War and the end of the bipolarity. So rest we will discuss what was the reason and consequences of this end of the bipolarity. So for today it is the sufficient for you. Rest we will discuss in the chapter, that is the part of your syllabus. Till then, Jai Hind.